Joining me now is Sky News contributor Kosha Gader. Kosha, let's start with Donald Trump's meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, where they discussed everything from European involvement in the Russian-Ukraine war to Trump's fresh tariffs. Now, Trump and Macron have this bizarre handshake ritual. They've long had this where they try to outdo each other. It's kind of endearing, I guess, and it happened again today.
President Trump, do you have a message for Pope Francis, sir, who's still in the hospital? Do you have a message for Pope Francis?
And they are both rather grabby with each other.
That is the most beautiful language. I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the most...
Now, there were a number of light-hearted moments throughout their meeting, including this one, where Donald Trump called out Emmanuel Macron for doing something a little underhanded, but he did it in such a jovial, friendly manner. This is great. Watch this.
I just want to tell you a little story. So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. That wasn't exactly what we agreed to.
Oh, it's an interesting relationship, Kosha, but I think that story, that's just classic Donald Trump, because he called him out. He said that he sold him out. He went and repeated stuff that wasn't strictly true, but done in such a friendly manner.
Such a friendly manner, gives him credit, calling him a tough customer. And, you know, we've talked about this before, the Trump sense of humor has long been underrated. His charm also, a lot of people, he grates them the wrong way, but a lot of people actually find him charming. And you can see that President Macron clearly does. Like, I kind of got the sense, like, yes, a lot of it was about power playing, this very famous handshake routine that they've had going on now for 12 years, and who's the alpha dog and all of that. But you could also kind of see through it that they actually seem to genuinely like each other. There is sort of a friendly jousting aspect to their relationship, and you know that speaks to that charm and humor.
Because they could not be more different in so many ways politically, and this is a very charged time when you look at Americans' relationship with Europe. J.D. Vance gave that incredible speech where he made it clear, and that speech was for the Trump administration, that we do not back your values, these open borders, hard green left policies. This is not suppression of free speech. That was a big theme of his speech as well. So where is that relationship, and where is the whole Ukraine-Russia conflict in that? Because America, again, has made it clear that they want an end to this conflict and they're not going to keep funding it long term.
I think we're going to see some changes rapidly, just given the pace of the Trump administration 2.0 over here. But the whole Ukraine thing is one piece in the broader chessboard that Trump is trying to reset. So some of it, yes, in its own right, he does want the war to end. He is very much in favor of peace and not having so many casualties and that carnage continuing. But also, it is sort of a linchpin right now in recalibrating the relationship with Europe, where they've got to step up and pay closer to 5% of their GDP on defense. I wouldn't be surprised if we see further moves where Trump starts to shut down military bases in Germany, for example. It's now 80 years post-World War II. Let's recalibrate. And simultaneously, he's also trying to open up relationships and normalize relationship with Russia. Maybe an uneasy ally, but they are a significant player in many ways. And that Macron sort of was trying to push back on that or give the counter argument, but we see that the Trump team is moving ahead with normalizing that.
Well, so much of what he's been pushing for is starting to eventuate. As soon as he had those attacks against Zelensky, we saw the European nations pledging to back Ukraine, to spend more, to do all the things that the Trump administration has been pushing them to do. So sometimes the way he gets there is a little bit unconventional, but he does eventually get there. Now, it's looking like Donald Trump will have his entire cabinet confirmed in record time, beating out previous presidents. So far, Trump has had 18 of his 22 cabinet nominees confirmed. You compare that with President Biden, who had 18 cabinet nominees confirmed 57 days into his term. So we are seeing a really quick pace here. It's not just the number that is getting confirmed so quickly, it's the quality of these candidates. They are loyal to the Trump team. It's very different from the first administration.
Absolutely. He's much more organized. We can see that transition team was funded and in place 6 months before the election in the eventuality that the state would come. They are much more vetted and aligned with his populist vision, which is breaking away from the traditional Republican Party and the candidates that he was putting in place last time. The speed is very interesting because a lot of people from his base were nervous that John Thune, who's a little bit more establishment type, would he slow walk it? That hasn't happened. So it's very clear that Trump is more powerful now, and even the establishment wing, which has dwindled in the Republican Party, but it is still there, seems to be following his lead much more so now than last time. And the last thing I would point is that all of them are very young, which is quite refreshing.
And one of the young ones is the new director of the FBI, Kash Patel. He is one that the Trump base is ecstatic about, has an enormous job to reform that organisation that has become politicised, been weaponised to attack conservatives. He is really quite important to what Trump is trying to achieve in his second term.
Absolutely. Him and then the deputy, Dan Bongino, who just came out as well. Definitely they seem to be singing from that same song sheet of what Trump and Pam Bondi, who they both report into the AG, want to do in terms of ultimately rebuilding trust in this once venerable, vaunted institution that has completely lost all trust, and it ranks very low out of all institutions in there. Also some kind of justice and reform possibly for people who came after political enemies, not just Trump, but others, will be something that will be very different, but they do seem to be moving in that direction. We'll see. And then the last thing, too, is all of these people are sort of made for TV in their own way. And Kash and Dan Bongino, a little rough around the edges. They're certainly not everybody's cup of tea, but they know how to do battle with adversarial media. And so you're going to see a lot of that, I think, in the next 4 years.
And something that's never talked about, and I don't really talk about it, but it's hard to not notice it, is the diversity of this cabinet. It's not something that Trump boasts about, or he doesn't try to say, I'm picking someone because I need a black woman, but there is a great deal of racial diversity, many women in senior positions in the administration.
Yeah, that sort of just happens to be the byproduct. As you say, he doesn't go for that, the way Biden famously said for Supreme Court Justice and as vice president, and that kind of came back to bite the party, one could say. But actually what it does is the diversity of his cabinet reflects, I think, the diversity of the MAGA populist movement and how that whole realignment in the country and in the electorate has led to actually a pretty cross-sectional coalition, if you will, of people, and that is reflected in these cabinet appointees.
Absolutely. Now, let's cross to New York, hear from the New York City Mayor, Eric Adams. He's announced that the Roosevelt Hotel's Asylum Arrival Centre and Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Centre is closing them down.
Today, we are announcing the Roosevelt Hotel, which served as both our Asylum Arrival Center and the Humanitarian Emergency Response and Relief Center for nearly 2 years, will be closing in the coming months.
That's interesting. It's something that has been a big topic of discussion in New York. It is a sanctuary city, but they actually got touched by this crisis. It wasn't just the border towns in Texas that were dealing with the flood of illegal immigrants who came in under the Biden administration. So
high time, many people would say. It's too little too late, but better late than never. And this story has so many layers of salt upon salt that they poured over this wound of illegal immigration that's afflicted the country and the city. So first of all, the fact that they're a sanctuary city, which is outrageous, but that's what it is. Second of all, you've got prime real estate, a hotel in Midtown Manhattan being used to house illegals. That is like a stick in the eye. Third, it turns out that it's actually owned by Pakistan. I just only recently learned this.
Really?
That the airline, the national airline of Pakistan, bought it and has been leasing it to New York City as of 2023. So our taxpayer dollars are going to fund a Pakistani-owned hotel that's housing migrants. Like, you just can't make this stuff up. And then the last thing that had happened last week is where FEMA gave $59 million to them against the executive order of Trump, and then Kristi Noem had to claw it back, so that was a small win. All those things are just such a slap in the face, and high time that this is finally coming to an end. I
tell you, Eric Adams, every time I hear from him recently, he sounds like he's a Republican man, not a Democrat. He's kind of... I don't know, he's been red-pilled. Maybe it's because of the Biden administration, the Justice Department came for him. Now let's have a look at some fascinating polling from Germany. A survey of more than 60,000 gay German men by Europe's largest gay dating platform found that the majority of them voted for the right-wing AfD party, which is led by an openly gay politician. But, Kosha, this is so fascinating to me because the lesbian gay vote has traditionally been hard left. That community has supported left-wing parties, but a lot of the policies that those parties support, including open borders, are not good for that community. And I think belatedly, the gay men of Germany have found out having an influx of people into their country who have zero respect for their lifestyle and their sexual orientation is possibly not a good thing. It's this coalition of the fringes that the left side of politics in most liberal democracies has stitched together in the last 40 years was always going to fray, because you have these different groups who actually are on a collision course to each other in terms of core values, but they were all, the common ground was that they hate the other side, and that stitched them together and put them in power for so long. Now you have the situation where the level of immigration that's in there and the asylum pipeline and people coming from these cultures where gays and lesbians are not welcome at a very deep, deep level, that is, of course, going to see that kind of a result. So it is interesting. The flip side is the more sort of center-right boomers didn't really vote for the party, so there is a cost to having it appeal too much to this demographic. You might be turning off the other demographic, and that's the needle they're going to have to thread. Well, it's incredible because the Conservatives got the biggest percentage. I think it was around 28%. AfD had 21%. The second biggest vote, and yet they're not going to be in a coalition together. It just seems like it's a system designed to defy the will of the majority. It's very frustrating looking on just from Australia. Before you go, I want to ask you about rogue Australian Senator Fatima Payman, who's described Iran, yes, Iran, as an incredible place for women, claiming that Iran allows women to participate in the workforce, whoopee, to ensure that they have a voice, that their voices are heard, and that their voices are involved in a democratic process. Realities that we're not privy to living here and listening to the propaganda that were received from very single-sided organisations with a specific agenda. Kosha, as someone whose parents escaped from Iran, as someone who can never go back to that country, I could never go and visit family because I would literally be thrown in jail and never see never see daylight again. I cannot believe the ill-informed nonsense coming from someone who should know better, whose own background should see her not running this campaign for the Iranian regime. This is a country that treats women like second-class citizens, that forces women to wear the hijab. Women have died fighting against that. And yet we've got an Australian senator who chooses to wear the hijab, advocating for the Iranian regime. And you know this better than anybody, that was so disingenuous. I can only surmise that she does know exactly what the situation over there is, and she's doing it to stir the pot either in the left-wing base of the country or in her former party. There's something else political behind her approach. Possibly, maybe there is some goal she's trying to achieve, but it's such a cynical thing for a woman with incredible influence to be doing that instead of taking a stand for the women of Iran. Kosha Gator, thank you so much for your time tonight.